So, carbon versus aluminium risers. This has been a topic that a lot of people have asked about, and today I'm joined again by Mike Peart to talk about this. Hi, Mike.
Hello, Ash. Thank you for inviting me today because, yes, I've certainly got some things to add to this conversation.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be a really interesting one, and a lot of archers have asked about this because essentially, obviously, you've got Hoyt products are all aluminium for recurve risers,
Yep.
and Win have obviously got aluminium risers, ATF DX, all these AXTs, previous ones as well. But they've also got their kind of flagship carbon risers. And also, this isn't just about which is kind of the best win riser, but there's other brands that do full carbon risers as well,
Yep.
aren't there? So like Uka,
Yep.
I'm trying to think of it, the Fiberbow back in the day as well did a
Oh, wow.
full
Yes, of
carbon
course. The
going
first
back.
the first real trailblazer. Yes.
Yeah, so there's a lot of kind of different brands, but really Win is the kind of main brand that does this.
Yes.
So let's, I guess, just kind of start with what are your kind of general opinions when it comes to which is better, carbon versus aluminium, and are there some people that should choose one or the other in terms of risers?
I'm going to go as I always do from my own experience, which is not as vast as yours on this topic. So definitely, you're going to have more to say. For me, yes, I was a Hoyt shooter for the vast majority of my career and all of my recurve career, and when I was offered win and wins to try by their representatives, it was always the carbon bows they gave me. And in all of the testing I did prefer my Hoyt. I got the best scores in my Hoyt, so that's what I used and stayed with to maximize my performance. But I have to go with the caveat. I didn't have. It's not like I had an aluminium win and win, a carbon win and win, and my Hoyt. I just had carbon win and win, and the Hoyt. So obviously that is not the best test going. And as a coach, if one of my students has got a carbon bow, I'm not super negative about it. I'm not like putting it at the top of the list that we must change this bow, but I don't recommend them. They're not there's not I don't feel as if there's a reason to shoot them, and there's possibly some concerns about why not shoot them. And when, as we'll touch on later, as when so many top archers and intermediate international archers don't find them beneficial, I find it hard to think that we're going to know something better than them. It just feels like if you've got the money to buy both and test both, well, you can't go wrong. And if you shoot better with the carbon riser, fantastic. But when you don't have that luxury, I just feel like you can't go wrong with an aluminium riser. And I like the aluminium win and win bows. I mean, they're really nice risers nowadays. I would always, if they want to win and win bow, I would go down the aluminium route, not the carbon route. But I know I don't have quite as much data as I should to sort of back up that opinion.
But you say that, but the opinion is also based on actual data you've had from the testing as well. This is the thing, right? Because this is what we found. So myself and a number of different archers on the team at the time where we were shooting win, and we tested even between the win and win carbon risers and the win and win aluminium risers. And yeah, I guess this is kind of time to get into the kind of downsides, if you like, of the carbon risers. But I think the biggest thing for me, I'd have to agree with basically most of what you said, where I would not generally recommend them. There's some exceptions later I'll mention, but generally the aluminium ones I'd kind of go for. But in particular, the kind of headline thing, I guess, is a lot of people have found the carbon risers can be a little bit critical at
Yeah.
times, or a little bit on a knife edge. So what I mean by that is critical in that, for example, there was one archer on the team that was shooting a CXT back in, I don't know when this was, 2014 maybe, or something like that, a win CXT, and then testing a win AXT. And with the CXT, they'd shoot some really, really great scores. You know, they'd shoot a 670 one day, they'd shoot even personal bests, and then the next day they'd shoot a 645 with a few blacks in the scorecard. You know, they'd shoot
Yeah.
a 645, and then you look at the scorecard and there's like a 3, there's a 4, and you're thinking, this isn't like this person doesn't shoot threes and fours. This is a national team member who trains every day and trains professionally.
But it's just too critical.
And it's just very, like, when you get it right, it's extremely right.
Yeah.
It can be very, very, really, it
No,
can be
I
really
understand
good.
that. Yeah.
But I think a lot of people, and this is what I found myself as well, when I'd make a mistake with a carbon riser, it wasn't very, it wasn't very polite. It wasn't very forgiving to what I'd done, essentially.
And
Um,
and the thing you have to remember is, sadly, we're all much more likely to make mistakes in competition,
this is
in
it.
that 1 hour shoot off to get through to the next round, in that gold medal match. So I would always be selecting for a bow that was more forgiving. I
Yeah.
guess even if it meant my qualifying score was going to be 5 points less, if it meant I was more consistently hitting that score, I would take that over anything, because I know my number of mistakes goes up in competition, not down.
100%. And this is the thing, because a lot of people they'd be shooting the CXT or a carbon riser. Maybe it was an Uka even, or like I mentioned before, I even knew
Yeah.
there was a para archer who tried a fiber bow, and they'd shoot some incredible scores in practice. And they'd be like, this is the one for me. This is the bow for me. And they'd go to the selection shoot that year or some international, and they'd wonder what happened, because it's like the bow has kind of turned from, it's got this kind of Jekyll and Hyde personality sort of thing. Um, Quickly, if you're enjoying this video, you're going to love the three things I want to mention to you right now. So first of all, if you haven't already, you need to check out onlinearcheryacademy.com, which is my free website where you can go, and there's basically technique guides, training guides, equipment guides, how to tune your bow, loads of stuff on there completely free. You can also put your email address in to get my free weekly newsletter. Over 8,000 archers worldwide read this, where I send tips that you can't get anywhere else. Maybe equipment tips, mental tips, training tips, stuff about competitions, everything in there. Also, if you haven't already checked out my Online Archery Academy video courses, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? You need to check them out. You can go to onlinearcheryacademy.com, click explore the courses, or you can go directly to courses.onlinearcheryacademy.com. There is currently, and I say currently, a beginner's course here that you can see, an advanced recurve technique course as well that you should check out, and eventually, very soon, there's going to be a tuning course as well. So if you haven't checked those out already, you can go there and have a look there. There's sections where you can basically see every single thing that I cover, which is a lot. There's a lot covered. This is the most comprehensive course on recurve technique in the world. I'm pretty sure I haven't seen any course that comes anywhere near this in terms of the detail that I go through every single stage of the shot, of your technique, how to troubleshoot those areas as well, how to train them, and I offer a money back guarantee with that as well. Finally, the last thing I want to mention, if you haven't already, go to members.onlinearcheryacademy.com, or you can go to onlinearcheryacademy.com and click become a member, and there you can join my membership, which is just £3.99 a month, to basically get exclusive access to me and loads of equipment advice, technique advice, free videos, Q&As, that kind of thing. So after this video, I'm going to record some more information in here on Q&As that people have sent in, technique things that maybe aren't as suitable for YouTube because they're just not going to get the views, that sort of stuff. This insider access is in the community, and you can see all organized in a really nice way. You also get my newsletter archive of all of those previous newsletters that I mentioned. You can access in here as well. So there's loads of stuff. Check it out. And now back to the video. And yeah, I would kind of say, like, your results are mostly determined by getting a consistent outcome, not by like the very, very best day, because even Kim Woo-jin doesn't shoot 702 every day. He shoots 692 on a bad day. Like it's his bad days. Yeah. that determine what's going to happen. Yeah, so kind of going on from that, I remember also after talking about this with a few of my teammates, we were at a World Cup at one point, and I know people in the comments are going to say, well, you don't have the data on this, but kind of we had the data. We were basically at a World Cup, and we were thinking, how many people actually shoot carbon risers? So we went top 20 men, top 20 women in qualification, and we went through the list and checked how many of them shoot carbon risers. And I want to say it was like 3 of them out of the top 40 in the world were shooting carbon risers. And then the caveat of that is kind of how they shot. So I think this is maybe something that you kind of found a little bit before as well, but when you when you think of like carbon risers versus aluminium risers, is there kind of a certain type of archer that you think shoots a carbon riser?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I knew that wasn't for me. I have a slower shot. I get a maximum score by having a bow that's on the smoother side. Now, it's I still liked a heavy draw weight, but I wanted a smoother, more softer shot. I had a slight preference for the wood limbs over the foam limbs, just a slight preference, not a big one. But again, that was just something that was just a little bit smoother, a little bit more softer. Now, maybe I can do that because I was shooting 53 pounds and I've got enough arrow speed anyway, so I can take a smoother bow. Maybe if I was a lady shooting 42 pounds, maybe I would have found things different. But for me, the carbon bow just didn't have the feeling and the reaction. And that's it. Yeah. When you just count up the number of sevens, sometimes the number of sevens can tell you more about a bow than the number of tens.
Yeah. And this is the thing as well with when it comes to the people that maybe I would recommend a carbon riser to. So there was a bit of a saying that a coach
Mm.
told me, which was essentially you can shoot a carbon riser is very quick and very critical, and you can shoot a carbon riser if you shoot faster than the riser. So that might sound a bit kind of weird, but essentially if someone shoots a little bit more of a slower shot, or if they kind of prefer aiming a bit more, they prefer having the stabilizer balance a little bit further back, that kind of thing, then they're kind of going to tend to want to shoot an aluminium riser because it's a
Yep.
little bit more forgiving. It doesn't rely on that snappy kind of direct shot. But if you're someone who shoots like Choi Mi Sun, super snappy, super quick shooting, that kind of thing, or another example of someone that does shoot. So this was in the list of those archers that do shoot the carbon risers. Choi Mi Sun, Kang Chae Young. Maybe people don't know who are watching right now, but some people will. Kieran Slater on the British team, he shot a carbon riser for a long time as well, and we both shot together with him. He had an incredibly fast shot, and he shot incredibly well with a carbon riser because he could control the riser because he's shooting faster than the riser, he's shooting more aggressive than the riser, he's got a snappier release. And as soon as you have like a slightly bit of a softer release, or you're slightly timid, or you're
That's
just
me. That's me.
and me as well. Like yeah, that just kind of like kills the score and makes it really critical. So I think I just wanted to say that so that this isn't like carbon risers are bad, but it's just
No.
that for a lot of people, aluminium is better suited, and
And
some people, yeah,
I guess the phrase it just it sounds pathetic. Be careful. Don't
yeah,
assume because it's $100 more, it's $100 better. It could be you've spent extra money to get something that's not going to suit you. Now the answer is always if you can test both, knock yourself out. Everything's great. But if you're on a budget and you know you're buying a bow and you're going to use it for the next 4 years, the aluminium ones are just such a safe bet. Now I won't lie, as being an engineer, I'm always interested in materials and things like that. I was sort of in the back of my mind thinking, well, carbon has taken over stabilizers, it's taken over arrows for sure. Maybe this is just the start of, and in 10 years time, everyone's going to be shooting a carbon bow. And that was my thinking going into the London Olympics. Sadly, I didn't make the team. I was reserved. So I was working for the news team. And in the weeks leading up to it, they asked us to get some stories already written. So I wrote a story for archers for a World Archery site about how this Olympics is going to be the battle between the carbon and the aluminium bows, and will we see the change in direction. And I wrote the story, finished it all, had it all lined up, ready to go. And then actually, when all the teams arrived and we were going to publish this the day before the competition, I went along the line and all the athletes who had been shooting carbon risers had turned up with aluminium risers. And there was so few carbon handles there and none of the key players, I couldn't publish the story. And I just binned it because I guess aluminium risers had won by default. But it would be fascinating if I could speak to all of those people about, because these are people who were within that season had been using a carbon bow, but in the 6 months leading up to the games, they'd made a choice, and that choice was to shoot an aluminium bow, not a carbon one. And I guess the numbers, in some ways, sometimes you don't have the scientific evidence that I would like as an engineer. Sometimes you have the anecdotal information of 100 archers around the world trying desperately to get the highest score they possibly can, and they made a choice.
Yeah, and that's kind of telling as well. This is where it comes kind of full circle when we talked the other day on your channel about equipment and stuff like that. But when it comes to an Olympic cycle, you see where people's opinions really lie, because you'll see what fletches they shoot, or knocks they shoot, or arrows they shoot, or risers they shoot. And all those people that tried the carbon that season, like you said, suddenly when it comes to crunch time, they're like, "Ooh, okay, let's go with the aluminium one." And yeah, it's an interesting kind of opinion that kind of shows itself, I guess.
Because I don't have a scientific reason for all of this. It could have been that we ordered that aluminium is gone out of the system, but it's really not. We're now at least 15 years into having top quality carbon risers, and they've still not grabbed the market. As soon as carbon stabilizers were invented, oh my God, they took over the market in a year because they were just so much better. Arrows, there's no one turning up at your club shooting X7s going, well, I think they're still better. They've got a better feeling. It's not. Carbon has taken over certain things, but with the risers, it's just not really happening. And I don't know why, really. I don't, is it just a reaction thing? Is it just a feeling?
It's
Archery is
difficult
about
to
a
say,
feeling
isn't it?
sometimes.
Yeah. And my kind of this is completely just an opinion as well, but my kind of feeling with this is, I remember Win and Win one day said that when it comes to choosing a string material for a Win and Win bow in particular,
Mhm.
BCY 8125 is a better material than Fastflight Plus, Brown Ale Fastflight Plus. It's, when you look at it objectively and you look at the stats, it's better because it's stiffer, it doesn't stretch as much, it doesn't have all this thing. But they say do not choose BCY 8125 because the reason it is actually objectively better also makes it worse in a real application, with like when it's interacting with you shooting as a person, because it's so stiff. It doesn't give any forgiveness in the limbs because it doesn't have any
Okay.
stretch that the Fastflight Plus has. And this then translates into it being more critical. And then I completely agree with that, having tested. I think for Hoyts, I think 8125 and 8190 is a lot more common.
Love
And
it.
those, yeah,
Absolutely. Love the stuff. Yeah, been using it for years.
exactly. But with win-wins, it doesn't really translate for most people. But after they said that, and I think this was around about a time when I was trying aluminium versus carbon risers and kind of thinking about that, I feel like carbon risers are better in measurable ways, and this is where it kind of becomes from an objective thing to a human feeling thing. But when all these tests that Win and Win do with their marketing, for they'll bring out a carbon riser and they have graphs of how the string deflection is less, and they'll have graphs of the stiffness and all of this, and I think that's all objectively true, and it is a better riser. But because it's so stiff, it then makes it critical. And I think this is the thing that you then can't really measure in a shooting machine, because the shooting machine does the same thing every time.
Because what do we care about the most, really, is how well does this shooting system absorb an error? And I cannot imagine as an engineer how I test that reliably. I wish I could if you could make a shooting machine that had tolerances built in, so every time it made a slightly different release, and then you could test it, but you can't. And I know, speaking to engineers at Hoyt on the compound side, they've made bows that in their mind are technically superior, and luckily nearly all of their engineers are excellent archers, and they've made that bow, taken it to the shooting range and gone, no, this is terrible. I can't hold it still and it doesn't shoot very well. So they need that balance, because if you just left it to a group of engineers who were not expert archers, they would design something that was technically perfect but shoot terrible. And that's why
Yeah,
for Hoyt they say you've got to be able to shoot a perfect score on the Vegas round before they'll give you an interview to be an engineer.
that's good. I like
How
that.
true that is, whether 299 is acceptable, I don't know. But that's the point they're getting across. They know they need engineers who can understand shooting and get feedback from shooting a bow, because just looking at the CAD machine and just looking at the science is not enough. Bows have to be shootable, just not great on paper. Now, hopefully, you always hope that the two things will align,
Yeah.
but proof has been shown that often it doesn't.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think that's been really good. I think that's a really good kind of summary of kind of carbon versus aluminium risers, who they're for and who they're not for, and
Could we
maybe
touch on one more riser
yeah,
just before we leave? Can you bring up Larry Godfrey's old bow?
yes,
I
yeah.
can't
Let
remember
me
the name of it. Can you?
yeah. So it was the Win and Win TF Apex, wasn't it? I
Yes,
think that's
because
yeah,
the story is the owner of the company, Mr. Park, uh, for him, he designed this bow, and when he made it and he'd done all of his testing, in his opinion, this was the best bow Win and Win had ever made by a reasonable amount. He really thought when he made this, he was going to make a serious impact on the archery world because it was so good
yeah.
and met all of the things he wanted from a riser.
It's this one here,
And
right?
this one here, and he thought it maxed out all of the things that he was looking for in a bow. And really, it didn't go off with a bang. It just went off with a whimper. And really, apart from our friend Larry Godfrey, no one really used it to any success. It
Yeah.
just didn't make an impact. It didn't deliver the results on the archery field that it delivered in the testing lab. And very much so, I was told Mr. Park was very disappointed because not just from a business point of view, he had made the bow that he'd been trying to make for 15 years, and when he made it, nobody liked it. Now,
This is the thing, isn't it?
why? Who knows? The fact they moved the stabilizer bush forward meant if you put your current stabilizer system on there, the bow felt totally
Mm,
different. So everyone who tried it should have gone out and purchased a new V-bar extender 2 inches shorter. But I can guarantee you most people didn't. So
no.
whether everyone didn't like it because it threw off their stabilizer system, so then they just dismissed the bow,
Yeah, they
I
thought,
don't
oh, it's
know.
rubbish.
I don't know. But it's just an example of even one of the clearly he's a great bow maker, but he got it wrong. And from what I was told, I'm not sure he really knows how he got it wrong, but it didn't do the results he thought, you know?
Or do you think it's because this is a bow I wish I had the chance to test because I spoke to Larry a number of times about this and how good that riser was, and I never got the chance to shoot one because by the time I wanted to, they didn't they were discontinued. You couldn't really get them anymore, and then it got to
Yes,
the
no, it
point
wasn't a
where
success at all.
yeah, it got to the point where like Win and Win said like, oh, I could find you one, but like, how are you going to get a spare and like stuff like that, and it was
You
getting a
don't
bit
want to shoot a
difficult.
bow where they're struggling to find you one.
Yeah, but do you think it was that it wasn't a great bow, or do you think it was just people didn't like the look of it? Because I think some people didn't like the look, and a lot of this sounds ridiculous. A lot of people said that they didn't want to have to try and fit it in their bow case because of the the front thing.
It,
And yeah,
all of these things is, as a bow maker, you would hate it if they were true.
can you imagine?
I think in hindsight, Win and Widder should have sent every bow out with like a 2 inch or a 2.5 inch extender to go on the front,
That would
because
have been
most of your
yeah.
archers are not going to go and buy a new piece of equipment just to try a bow. They
I
just
think that's a
won't. They're
great
going to
point.
put their old stabilizers on there, and they're either going to have their extender on there, then it's too long, or they're going to shoot it without their extender, and then they've just moved the weight back. So they're not doing a like for like test with their old bow. Maybe they should have made that bridge a little bit bigger, or just sent it out with an extender. I don't know. I don't know. But our friend
Yeah,
Larry loved it and shot it for many years with great results. You know,
he did.
680 plus, but he was absolutely in the minority.
And they do actually currently make, I forget the name of it. It's the Wheelwiss Radical Pro.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll bring up here as
That's
well. But
going along
they,
the same
yeah,
ethos, the
they currently make
same
that.
thinking. But
So I'm
again, do
interested
we? I
with that
can't
one as well.
recall seeing that on the podium, if you know what I mean. I don't think it's. I'm not
Not
saying
many,
it's a
yeah,
bad, but I'm just saying it clearly hasn't started to dominate the market.
yeah. So I'd be interested. I think that's a really good kind of summary of carbon versus aluminium. But I'd be interested in the comments below as well. If people can let us know what's your experience been if you've tested carbon risers, how have you found them? And particularly, how have you found practice scores versus competition scores and kind of what we've been talking today about if they're critical or not. I think I'd be interested to kind of hear everyone's opinion on that.
And please take away that when you're testing, yeah, don't just look at the total score. Look at how many sevens and sixes you shot. How many bad shots is each bow delivering? Because, yeah, sometimes in competition, that's the bit that matters.
It definitely is. Awesome. That's been great again today, Mike. Thank you for joining us.
No problem. Really enjoyed that.
Thank you. Thanks a lot to everyone watching as well, and we'll see you in the next one.